This is Live for Love TV. Live for Love TV. Yes, I am.
One step more. One step more. One step more. Until you reach your goals. One step more. Save them soul. One step more. One step more. How good it is to reach the
Live for Love TV. This is Live for Love TV. Live for Love TV.
Welcome back, Live for Love TV. Today is the first day of the 11th month, 21st year, 21st century. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Today I'm going to touch on a subject. And you know, I was a touch and Lego thing, so it's not going to be anything long. I'm going to touch on a subject that I'm going to have to come back to in the future because it's getting that kind of traction. Well, currently in the UK, there's in the black community, the Afro-Caribbean community, there are some people's names being called out, males' names, men's names mostly, but a few females as well, being called out as sexual predators, as people who have groomed the young girls in the past, who have raped them apparently, allegedly should we say, who have had sex with underage girls of 16 under, so, or under 16 should I say. Now I'm not going to talk about all these subjects right now because later on I'm hopefully, maybe if I get a chance to, I'll be able to interview maybe one or two of the sisters that have either this has happened to or actually running the campaign. But anybody who's grown up in the community, whether it's anywhere, I don't care if it's Africa, Caribbean, America or the UK, they know what happens inside their particular culture. Not their culture may be any different to anybody else's, but they'll know what happens inside their culture. And a lot of these things that we're hearing about now, many of us had heard about from when we were growing up. So a shock horror maybe to some of the youngsters, I don't know, but to people of my generation, there's no shock and there's certainly no horror. We know all about it. Now, one thing that I think is going to really mud the waters in this whole situation is this underage sex, what we call people consenting or not being allowed to consent under 16 years old. Well, here comes a massive problem. I don't know exactly when the age of consent came in, and probably some will say before the video maybe I should have done it, but that would be, let's say, in the UK in the colonial period, in all the countries that I was just mentioning, the Caribbean and Africa and other countries, would be under the colonial period. The reason I mention that is because in a lot of cultures that I've been and I live in and have lived in, that age of consent is blurred. And let's not make any bones about it, it's completely blurred. There's no concept of the 16-year-old other than in law. Many women, girls of 12, 13, 14 have had children, and everybody knows about it. Their mum knows about it. The people in the area know they've had children at that age, and there's never really been this massive uproar. And that's why I say it muddies the waters, because in the UK, when you're saying that men are having sex with people under 16, which I believe is totally and utterly wrong, people have to understand that just because a lot of people's names haven't been called out, a lot of people have been doing this. It's been going on constantly. You know, I can go back to the days of Windrush when a lot of our parents came over. There were a lot of that generation who never had this concept of 16 and up. Let's be frank. Let's be honest. A lot of them never had it. They didn't. I'm not saying that they raped anybody, and I'm certainly not saying that they forced anybody against their will. But since we're now saying, or since it's been said that nobody can give consent under 16, they would be in trouble. Some of the great artists that people listen to were talking to young girls and trying to get them around to their way of thinking from they were in school. big artists. We're not talking about no small little artists, big artists. Get them around to their way of thinking. That would be constantly as grooming. Even if they didn't have sex with them, that would be grooming today. And those people would be in serious trouble. We know about people like Elvis Presley. He met his wife, I don't know how old was she, 14? Priscilla Presley, that he married later on. Was she 14? You can go right through the generations going back. So the reason why I'm saying this is because it's bad and it's wrong. But we have to be frank about it. We have to be careful when we start to say that this man had sex with a 14-year-old. Your dad could have had sex with a 14-year-old. Your uncle could have had sex with a 14-year-old. Yes, it's still wrong. But if you're pointing it out, then I think this needs to be pointed out as well, that there is a cultural problem here. We had songs back in the 80s like Young Gal Business, Control Jamaica. What type of young gal are they talking about? Are they talking 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds? No. When they're saying young gal, they mean young gal. That's what they were saying, and that's what they were alluding to. And when I spent time on the continent of Africa, to this day, you see a lot of girls under the age of 16 who are with men older than I am right now. And their families know about it. And if anything, their families condone it because this man who they're with can actually take care of not just the young girl, but can take care of the whole family with his financial position. He will not be put down for rape. And if you did try to charge him with rape, the whole family would turn against you. People who remember the Beanie Man, the film Beanie Man was in, called Dancehall Queen, the theme to that film, remember what it was, for those of you who forget, it wasn't just about dancing. It was about a dancer trying to keep her young girl from having to have, even though she was part of it, having to have sex with a man twice, if not twice the girl's age, a grown man, while she was in school. And she said to the young girl, remember, him pay the bills inside here. So we're talking about things in culture, maybe not just our culture, maybe all cultures. But since people are mentioning in the UK that in our culture, in our community, in the past, we have to understand what has happened and how some people think. I've heard people say things constantly. I'm talking about grown men my age and older, and that allude to the fact that once that looks ripe to pick, it forget pick. I've heard this for years. This is nothing new. This didn't just happen with somebody else out there whose name's been called out there in South London or in North London or East London. This has been going on for years. People have been picking these fruits because they believe they're ripe. There's been no age group in it. And so we need to have that conversation, because that conversation is going to go deep. It's going to go deep into the rabbit hole, very, very deep. And sisters are the ones who can tell us a lot more about what was happening there and what's happening. I'm saying this because if we're in a position now where everybody is saying 16 years and older is the only time, which is what the law says and which I condone, then we have to understand what was going on in the community back in those days. What was going on? There wasn't one person doing this, or two people, or three people, or maybe some little ring in Brixton. It was going on in Willesden, in Harlesden, in Kensal Rise, in Tottenham, in Birmingham, in everywhere. Everywhere this was going on. This is something that was rampant, and anybody who spends time in the Caribbean, you see it. You see it constantly. People don't pretend it doesn't happen or why. Whatever, what people do is they protect their own families. If your sister, your daughter is 16 or under, you protect her. And if she's anybody in your friend or that circle, you make sure you protect her. But the truth is, some of these people who are protecting their own daughters are just as guilty when it comes to somebody else's daughter. This is another issue, an issue that people are going to find horrible. I'm not trying to mud the waters for those who have done these things, but I'm trying to say that we have to get the whole thing out in the open. We say it's wrong, it should be wrong for everyone. It's not wrong for no name brand man, and then some other people who kind of kept it quiet but were doing this and doing that. It should be wrong for everyone. This is the problem, and what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing is names are being called out. The predators, the predators. See this down. The predators, yeah, they are the ones we should be after. Those who are predators and push themselves and rape, no problem. But if you're going to talk about people who are underage, then I think we need to bring them all out. Bring out the whole culture. Let's speak about the whole thing. Don't let people get away with it because, they were 20 and the girl was 14 or 15 and she looked big and ripe. And she may be bigger than most of the women who were in their 25 years old. This is the same situation. They're just as guilty as anybody else. And even if the girl consented, the law says she wasn't old enough to consent. So let's have a conversation on that. Let's try and be mature about it. And one thing I'd say before I forget, actually, one thing I'd like to say is that there are people, men, are seeing comments when women are coming out 10 or 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40 years after the event where they've been raped, molested, and mistreated. And they're asking, why are these women coming out with it now? Why are they saying this thing now? And when I read these comments from men, I'm astounded that this person has got this. I mean, this guy must have a chicken brain. He must have the brain the size of a pea to make a comment like that, and to say, well, if it happened that long ago, how do we know it happened? Well, we could say that about anything. We could say that about slavery. We could say that about anything. What happened to people during slavery 150, 250 years ago? People who weren't there, like myself and many people who will be watching this, still feel the trauma and the pain of that when the stories are told and when they hear and feel. And you're saying that somebody who actually was raped, not somebody whose ancestor was raped, that you still feel about, but somebody who's actually raped, shouldn't be speaking about it because it happened so long ago and they were only 8 years old or 9 years old or 10 or 12 years old. If you don't have anything to say, keep quiet. Seriously, because only thing that makes you look like to me is that you're beyond ignorant, you're a fool, and there's nothing you say after that I'd be listening to. All these sisters that were raped, that predators preyed on, they should come out and they should speak and speak loudly. And it's not a question of whether they're telling the truth or not. Just speak your truth, speak your piece. Let the man them defend themselves. And if they don't feel like defending themselves, they don't have to defend themselves. There's no court of law, they don't have to defend themselves. If they feel they're being maligned on social media, what's the big deal? It's no big deal. Some people are even saying that you shouldn't go after these guys because they come from families, and so who cares about their families? If you do something like this to somebody, and if that person can be in pain 35 years later after they've had a family, grown up, almost as if the thing happened to them the day before they spoke about it, and you're talking about somebody's family. If that's somebody in my family, anybody in my family, and they've done this, I don't care how good they are to me. I don't care how friendly I am with them. Me and them is cool, no problem. They never done anything to me. I didn't know they were doing this. But they should be called out. Call them out. Call them out. And I'll ask them, what's this person saying about you? What's going on? You need to defend yourself. You need to go out there and say what happened. And even if there's no legal case to answer, you know this is what you did, you need to apologize and say sorry to that person and to everybody, to all her family, the people that disbelieved her when she said it, and the people that the girls that you probably frightened into saying nothing. You need to speak out, because the reality is that this pain is real, and if you caused it and you feel you were a young person at the time, you didn't know what you were doing, if you've really come around and you've changed, then just admit it. Admit it. That's what means you change. That's confess. What they say, confession is good for the soul. Then confess to what you've done, and let all of these sisters be at peace with themselves. If you think that if somebody says don't confess because you may then be charged, who cares? I don't care about that. You got to feel good with yourself. It don't matter. You could end up in a car crash tomorrow and disappear. So you need to feel good within yourself, within your spirit, within your soul about who you are and what you've done. And your family shouldn't be defending you until you defend yourself. If someone is spoken about like that in my family, I'm going to go to them and say, go and defend yourself. Because I ain't going to defend you. I don't know what you've been doing. You don't know what I've been doing. I ain't going to defend you. You go out there and defend yourself. And then when we hear your words and the sincerity of your words, we'll start to work out what transpired and what happened. Anyway, that's enough for today. Live for Love TV. Take care. See you soon.
People, one step more.